So, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for this panel on how to best monitor applications with SCOM. All of you guys probably are much more experienced in this particular section, I think, than me. So, all I'm gonna do is play the role of pretty much the interviewer and ask you how your experiences are. And I think application monitoring with SCOM is it has conflicting opinions. Some people say it is good enough. Some people say it's not. I guess in your opinion, what do you guys think?
I think personally, if it really again depends on the needs of what you want to monitor from your application. So within Polypore, my company, we monitor the applications, the health of the applications, connections, and everything on a end user point of view. But we also do the applications performance monitoring with the SCOM APM feature to really monitor performances of the applications and some applications failures that we might have occurring. Knowing that in our company we have mainly custom applications, .NET custom application, which helps a lot to use the APM feature of SCOM to monitor that. But again, I think it really depends on the needs of what you want to monitor on an applications point of view with SCOM. Personally, I'm a big fan of SCOM and APM feature of what you can do, especially as it really fits our needs, as we have everything on-prem, Microsoft first company and .NET custom applications. It really fits our needs, and we can monitor basically everything with SCOM based on Windows environment, Microsoft environment.
Janek, just also you addressed it. It is most used for custom applications, and that's maybe also the biggest issue. A lot of customers don't have custom in-house made applications, and then using APM is a bit more tricky and maybe not work at all. So and that's also what I see, at all the customers on implementation. I saw the past 20 years, and since APM since 2012 was put in, I didn't see a lot of usage of APM, to be honest. So, and that's also just between the gaps, the gap is closing between DevOps, we have going to the IT project, going to the developer, because you need to have some knowledge, not to set it up, you can, just click through, or if you know what namespaces are, etc., you're able to manage that. But after you get messages, and then you look at the stack trace, whoa, what's this? So, and then clicking through, I think that's the same like using apps inside. It's almost an education you can get to work with it. So, and that knowledge gap, that should be more, should be better, else people will leave it as it is. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's right. And a good example in our company is when we introduce the APM feature of SCOM to monitor the performance, the application's performances, we started, to send some IntelliTrace or files that you can generate from the APM feature to our development teams for some, functions or methods that were causing performances issues in our applications. And every time we send these elements, these informations to the development teams internally, they always say, it's amazing how deep in the details you can go with the APM feature. And it actually helps a lot the development teams to actually track the bugs, create some fixes, improvements for some applications, because you can really go down into some great details of your different functions, methods, and even SQL queries.
Yeah, with the parameters in it. It is an amazing good feature. Before Microsoft bought it from AV Code, we had some demos there, and it was back in 2007,
Yeah.
I think, from the company itself, and it was so expensive to buy, so we dropped it from the software company where I was working, and then 2 years later it was implemented into SCOM, so it was real great to have it there. So, but I really agree. If something is breaking, and even if you don't have any developer knowledge, you have some proof that something is wrong, and you can even give it to your supplier, your third-party supplier, if it is not in-house. Look, there is really something wrong with this application. So that's really true. So I will really, say to the people, try it out and give it a shot. It could be in hard way, especially Janik, you would know it would not be that easy that every application are going to be monitored out of the box. So, but also if I'm going to look at the questions here on the chat, when I'm going to the customer and they want to have application monitoring, I always say, okay, how fast do you want to be triggered, and how fast to resolve the issue? So, and normally I start at top just doing simple user transactions. Simply, going to the website, look if the content is there, doing some real user clicks, for example. If that is failing, or not is processed in the correct time you wanted to, then you get an alert, and then is the question, how do I resolve it, and how fast do I resolve it? And if you use APM, for example, then of course that part gives you a speed up to solve the issue. So yeah, in my opinion, I would start at top level, just doing user transactions, and then if that is stable and you're happy with it, then dive one level deeper using other tools like APM, for example.
I agree. I sometimes get asked also to check some of the applications. So sometimes it's an application coming from the outside, and if you just add it into APM, first of all, and then run the extra check that it does before trying to add in the user side of it, and it will actually do a number of checks and say, hey, there's something wrong with this piece of code, which prevents me from putting it into APM at all. For instance, there are resets of the performance counters in the middle of the stack trace. Then it will actually alert you into that as well. And we had actually a customer who asked for that, got the report, sent the report back to their external provider, and said, what, there's something in your code which is preventing us from monitoring it. Can you adjust it? Of course, that was not a very large company sitting on the other side, on the software side. So you can actually ask for, hey, please check your code if there's something wrong with it, or to make it better usable for monitoring.
Yeah.
Code might be usable and working, but it might not be best practices or used for monitoring or used for other purposes in the back end, in the back of your mind. Because that's not always first priority. First priority is making it work, and then all of the rest. And some people forget that. Also, I saw some questions from Nolan coming by in the chat for the end-to-end monitoring, I think I saw. So to track a transaction flow end-to-end, yes. Well, I would say yes. We've seen that being done with all kinds of transactions. So you actually see which calls are getting done and which calls are going out to the SQL server. We can see if the queries are split or not, or if they are, sequential or at the same time. How long they take, what data gets transferred back and forth, and so yeah, you can really see a lot. You can also select to only follow 5 or 10% of all the user sessions instead of all of them, because if you're on a busy website, that will be a little bit more useless to just follow all of the sessions. I would first go for only a part of it, and then of course you can see the error when there are errors coming up.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if you. I saw maybe it was Gerald also calling out multiple things. So I think if you are monitoring just a .NET application, I'm not sure if you can do an application which is half .NET and half Java, because there is a .NET portion in APM and there's a Java portion in APM, but I'm not sure if you can do both at the same time. Yannick, do you have any ideas?
I don't. No, I don't know. Again, we really have just .NET applications, which definitely is the way to use the APM feature of SCOM, right? Yeah. But I think that there's a dedicated management pack as well for the JavaScript APM monitoring that you can add as well.
But then again, it should be a web service in this case. So, and I thought a long time ago, I never tried it out, but there is a tweak to also add, if I'm correctly, a native .NET app instead of an HTTP related service. But I could be wrong. I remember it. So maybe that's something for the APM team at Microsoft. But
yeah,
definitely, yeah.
I was actually going to say, I mean, nowadays we don't see a lot of, say, literature coming out of Microsoft or even from community regarding the APM feature of SCOM. SCOM in general, I guess, but especially the APM part. Do you think it has something to do with the introduction of Azure Monitor, or how Microsoft is pushing people towards Azure Monitor?
Yeah, you heard a lot, eh? So they are not investing anymore because everything goes to the cloud, everything to Azure Monitor. I'm a huge fan of that part, but also, they also indicated, and I think we know it, they are putting a lot of time in SCOM.
I was just going to say that Akash this morning was very clear in his statements on that.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, by the way.
Yeah, so the thing is that they need to focus their attention, obviously. So APM went cloud, I think it was 5 years ago, something like that. And the code changed a lot on that side, trying to expand it, because first it was like a smaller version of the APM. And now it has been expanding throughout the years. So there's a dev working on that side, but not on the SCOM side itself. Only if they need to change some parts of the SCOM agent, the DLLs belonging to the APM side of things, then they make some changes. But there isn't much within SCOM itself changing on the APM.
Yeah.
Same goes for some of the other features we just named, the ACS, AAM. There's not going to be much changes in there. So if you really want more extensive monitoring on that side, either it's in there right now, like Yannick is using, or you need to move that part of the functionality into the cloud side.
But if you're looking at the price tag, then if you go to the cloud, you pay per usage. So that's and if you already have System Center license and you already have SCOM, then APM, of course, is free.
Exactly. It makes a difference. I think, my view on the answer is essentially, from an engineering perspective, to add more than just the ability to do APM for .NET apps would be just a large amount of engineering effort. And obviously, as you say, Gerald, as Akash has said, there is an engineering team working on SCOM, but it would take such a lot of their time to focus effort on that and add functionality in the SCOM
I think
product.
they'd have to double the team.
Well, yeah. It's a large undertaking.
Yeah.
And given that it's free in SCOM, as you say, Mikhail, it's they wouldn't get any necessarily additional revenue for that engineering. Just from the business perspective, they'll be looking to sell essentially the cloud-based APM functionality, which is all metered billing, so they can charge for the use of it. This isn't just Microsoft. All the other APM tools are work like this from a billing perspective. So that's why.
But what you do have, if it's compatible with the applications, then it works fine. But like Michel also said, it's not applicable to every application and every customer. I have a lot of customers which never touch APM. Okay, that's all fine, and then you can just remove it from SCOM completely if you want to as well.
That's the way we went. Basically, I'm working in the financial sector, not very known for its modern applications.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to mention digging through quite some legacy. But we've got Uniface running, we've got Java running, we've got .NET running. Trying to get all that into APM in SCOM, I'm not even going to try.
Yeah,
not worth the time.
It would be a great scoring points for Microsoft. If they are going.
I think they would go the way of Android versus Windows Phone.
Yeah.
Basically, there are a couple of major players in that field already.
Yeah.
I don't see Microsoft betting against the AppDynamics, Dynatraces, and whatnot of this world. I think they have to invest too much for too little market share, basically.
Yeah, but that's the same. They acquired Avico at that time,
Yep.
So that's. But what I try to say is that you're exactly saying the legacy application. So the legacy .NET application. So I call it the native applications in .NET. So if they are going to make it more applicable to that kind of applications too, then you will see that companies that are especially using that kind of legacy applications needs insight to the black boxes there. So I think that will really score points on the user side for using APM.
I'm not sure. I would say Microsoft would never bring something to market that plays in the APM space, but big companies are funny things. Rather than building it, with a blank sheet of paper, they'll go and acquire somebody basically to have that capability, exactly as they did with the .NET APM capabilities in SCOM. Because again, quicker way to get the thing to market, basically with a Microsoft logo on it. So I wouldn't say never, but I agree that it would be a large undertaking one way or another. Either they've got to go and spend a lot of money on buying a company, or it would be a massive piece of engineering effort at work.
Yep.
And then they would still connect it probably to the cloud version of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's where they're going. That's what they're investing in. So, and if there is a connection to your on-prem, then it works, and that's fine. You can use it from there as well. But that's going to be the direction.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't expect too much of that.
And of course, they will leave gaps for the ecosystem. So companies to jump into the gap. So
that's fine.
I always wonder, do they do that deliberately, or is it because they don't have, nobody can cover everything? But it's kind of a sidebar.
For my opinion, it's marketing.
Interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if you're not wrong there. Gerald, I'm glad you joined this panel, because I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned obviously a bunch of other APM tools alongside SCOM. From what you said earlier, what do you use which for? Do you do anything relating to applications in SCOM?
Hardly any. A few web checks, and that's about it. And because we have quite a few very heavy web applications. What our company does is we handle mortgages. So we do all the processing for it, including the ability to apply for a mortgage online, and then all the way through to payments and paying it off and having everything filed. That's not something that you can buy an off-the-shelf piece of software for. So we've got quite a few application systems running, and because of that, we can do web checks in SCOM, but if you want to go very much further, you run into all sorts of problems, especially with all the legacy. So we stick to the web checks in SCOM and the infrastructure monitoring, and we've recently started, well, about a year ago, started using Dynatrace to get things running. About 6 months ago.
Yeah, that's also an amazing tool, Dynatrace.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess part of the what I was looking to understand is, so do you guys use, say, DAs in SCOM to build applications out? Obviously not as deep as APM, but it is a form of application
We do,
monitoring.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, that can also be a real a problem in SCOM. Earlier this week, I've been while troubleshooting some severe database performance issues, we figured I discovered a few things in especially the VMM integration that can actually cause the distributed applications to put huge loads on the database because of all the group calculations, all the population calculations that run.
Interesting.
Right.
It falls more into the category of bug than sort of feature gap, or
I think this is more of a bug. The only problem is now how to quash it.
Yeah, of course, and it's something that
that's you don't. I guess Microsoft doesn't really have to directly compete with Dynatrace or App Dynamics, so to say, but they can at least improve what they've already got. Right? So you don't have to always come up with new features. You've already got features.
I really see them as complementary.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
So distributed applications is something which is used a lot, and I think that is also a very, very important thing to have in SCOM. Not just having a management pack and it'll just find components here and there and start monitoring them, because sometimes you still don't know which application they belong to. You might have a website on one server and a database on another. So having distributed applications created is you mostly do probably.
Yeah.
But so it's not like having some of these applications like Active Directory, Exchange, SharePoint. They create their own DA basically behind it, saying, hey, I need some components here, I need some components there, and they belong together. But for other applications, we have to create them ourselves. And I'm thinking, like what are some of the ways of creating them? I mean, in the past, I've created them manually. I've also used the previous product, the LiveMaps product from Servision and now Matello, to create distributed applications, because that's basically what their services do in the back end. I thought it was a very good idea, actually, also to do that way back when, in the beginning, because creating distributed applications was difficult. Later, also squared up with Veda, to visualize it, but also bring it back into SCOM as a DA. How do you guys see?
They all come down to the same thing, having distributed applications with the very nice group populator module that I've basically come to hate.
You are correct. Well, they are all essentially DAs under the covers, so the performance issues, are still going to be there. And
DAs use the same group populator module that groups do.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it is. But I think it adds a lot of value to SCOM, also to be able to target things like service levels, notifications, put them in dashboards to make dashboards clearer. Because if you only look at the all alert screen and you see alerts coming from servers which have just random names or numbers in there, not the naming convention where you can see what this server is doing, which is quite common, then you have no idea what's going on in your environment. And then you need to have groupings of objects, which are DAs and dashboarding.
But you still need to have a technical knowledge of how the application environment works. So, and that's maybe where also, Blue Stripe came in to provide you that knowledge. Of course, it's cloud-based. Still, it's having the distributed applications in SCOM, that's really a really cool feature, and you can make really nice overviews of your environment, exactly like Bob said, and connect SLAs to it. Really great. But still, I just start, at top level and then work down to it, because you have to have knowledge of your infrastructure and your application architectures. So
yeah,
yes,
well, for us, Dynatrace takes away part of that requirement, because Dynatrace actually is able to discover all the steps that an application takes.
Yeah, that's exactly what they now are also offering in Azure this way. But again, if you are going to look at the price tag, at the end, it's the price tag that does, that answered the question if you may use it or not. I really think if you look at Dynatrace, at the end, if you use all the options and you have all the metrics, then it's not that
you have all to pay.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
And I think, and as you said earlier, Michel, it's you need to go from top to bottom to see what you really want to monitor, and then especially it also depends on the audience behind that. Because, for example, you can have a team like service desk people or help desk people where they want to be aware of the state of an application, just knowing if the application is actually up and running or not, right? Because they are in the first line of contact for the users, right? And then you might have the IT application support team that would need a little bit more details of your application's monitoring. Okay, the application is up and running, it's green, everything is fine, user can use it, but that's still slow by using the application. So there might be something behind the scene, and that's where the distributed applications or the enterprise applications squared up feature helps a lot as well, because you have multiple levels of information when talking about applications monitoring. You have the front, what the business and the users are facing, right? Then you have the backends. If there is a server issues, maybe it can just be a disk space issue on a SQL server, which impacts the performance of the applications because of writing on the disk that could pose problems. And then you have the last steps for more technical details and development details, where your application's monitoring can help to identify a bug, a slowness, something wrong in the method, and that's where APM comes in.
Yeah, and I want to add one more level. That's the manager's level, and they only want green.
Exactly.
A dashboard of green. Yeah.
Well, there's a great solution for that, isn't there? It's called MS Paint.
Yeah.
I had one customer who did that actually. They had like an alt-tab possibility to move back and forth between screens. It was quite interesting. But sometimes managers come in and they see stuff red in SCOM, which is quite common, but they don't know what's going on, so they are in immediate panic mode. And then some system admins kind of cover that by having a green screen somewhere and then switching between them. I'm not saying that's the best way. So the thing is, what we used to do. Yeah, green machine. So what we used to do with a certain competing product, Live Maps, was actually there were multiple levels. So you had an infrastructure level, application level, and user level. And what managers are interested in is just the user level, right? So they don't care about whatever you do on the back end. Just you might have that highly available. So if one breaks, is when one is red, one is green. He doesn't care as long as the user side is still green. So,
exactly.
You have to target your dashboarding also according to the stakeholders which you are providing the data to, because they might not want to know if you have a SQL cluster that one of the nodes has a problem, because, it will just automatically fail over and the other one will just pick it up. So, that's the same goes for any dashboarding tool. And just make sure that you have some views targeted at your audience, which might not be technical. So they
exactly and proper roll-ups and everything.
Yeah, not technical.
Exactly.
That is
Yeah, good chat. I was actually going to ask you, right? So when you talk about APM, do you mean infrastructure APM or do you mean like code-based APM? And how does the monitoring, I guess, or the decision depend on the audience, on the end user consumers, I guess? Because as a user or as an application user, I may not be always interested into seeing what, say, like what function is or what piece of code in an application is going wrong. I just need to know if my application, can I connect to my application and stuff, right? So
well, that's and if you have a lot of homemade applications like we do, we've had a very interesting case where Dynatrace was used to check out what the result was of an update in one of the programs, where they changed the databases queries to all go in one connection, and we actually saw over 50% reduction in response time for that particular web service.
Yeah.
Well, that's a surefire way to make managers happy.
Yeah, for sure, with an historic trend below it. Yeah.
Well, it's basically a comparison. That's what happened last week. This is what happens this week. Same time frame, Tuesday morning, 10 to 12, whatever.
Yeah.
And
out of the box, at my knowledge, it's not in there, the reports with overlay historic comparing in APM. But of course, the data is there, so you should be able to generate a report. Yeah,
that's something where I would think things like Power BI dashboards, squared up, Civision, or Martello could come in. Not sure if they are able to do that, but
yeah, if you can dashboard it, then the same goes for the squared up.
Yeah,
just pulling up data and displaying it. Yeah.
Don't forget also the big power tool, Power BI.
Yeah.
So you can do really amazing things with it. Even, using the free Power BI desktop connected to your SCOM data warehouse or your operational database, and you could pull out really nice reports. Of course, that needs some development knowledge. But at the end, it's really a powerful tool also, if you miss it in SCOM.
Yeah, funny. I was just talking to Dujon before. He had a session, I think 2 hours ago or 1.5 hours ago. And he's also somebody who's using the Power BI a lot to create all kinds of dashboards and reports. So it's pretty nice to see what can be pulled out and what can be shown. It's a completely different way of doing things.
For investigation, it's a really cool tool. Of course, if you want to get notified, that's not the right tool to use, of course. So then we have SCOM.
We have SCOM for everything.
Yeah, I think. Well, Marijn also asked a question in the chat. What about the performance pressure from group calculations, as I mentioned earlier? I really look forward to anyone who has any suggestions on that, because.
Well, you can run into some issues, I guess, but normally distributed applications, yes, of course, it's all about groupings, same as if you create a lot of groups in SCOM. But you are creating them for a reason, right? Yep. So to target something, to target overrides, views, notification channels, reports, to put them in dashboards. So you are creating them for a reason.
Yeah, I'm still looking at the containment with max depth options, but I haven't got around to fix it, to really write that out yet.
What you also see a lot when people are creating the DAs is that they're not putting it to a type, so just saying all types. Yep. And when you then put instances into that group, that makes it of course a lot heavier to calculate.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, I'm off to the main screen again.
Right, perfect.
So, yes, thank you so much for joining, Gerald. I was just going to announce. Yeah, so the main stage should be live now. So if you want to catch all the new sessions, then please head over to the stage. If you want to stay here and chat with Bob and Michelle and Yannick or myself, then just stay here.
I'd love to, but choices.
Too many hard choices there.
Yeah.
Too many hard choices.
Yeah, but right. So yeah, with live maps, actually, we never had a problem with those DAs as well. I mean, I can guess that if you have like thousands of them, then of course, pressure becomes larger and larger. Hopefully, you also scale the SQL and the management service accordingly. So that is also something to keep in mind, obviously. And of course, make things if they make sense. Because if you create complexity without making sense and collecting extra data, for example, we talked about collecting event data yesterday as well in some of the panels. Yeah, if it's useless, turn it off, get rid of it, so that all of this calculation work becomes less.
Yeah.
So that's the trick.
That's indeed how we do it, Bob. So that's was also I my knowledge, in 2007 when the first SCOM usable version came out.
Yeah.
They also complained a lot about having everything enabled, because in MOM it was different. And now we went also back to that idea. So out of the box, we always deliver everything disabled. And then using classifications, you can tag your objects, mostly machines or applications. And then the correct monitors will be enabled. So you always have what you need. The downside of that part is when you have an issue, you only have that part of the information, of course. And if you just have everything enabled, you can, so the downside is that you have to enable the detail monitors and wait again till it happens. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, with SCOM, that's the eternal fight, I guess. You can turn everything off and make it back to a ping tool, and then start turning some of the things on where people are interested, and then they will say, hey, why didn't you see it? And the other side of the story is everything is turned on, you're over collecting, everything becomes slow.
It doesn't work.
And you basically get the same question, why didn't you see it? Well, because it's sitting between 1,000 other alerts. So that's why I'm not seeing it, because I don't know what's important anymore. So that's the eternal fight, I guess, within SCOM itself. Tuning things and getting things up to speed. So yeah, I mean, we all have our methodologies for it. Sometimes it's disabling, things, especially if they are not needed. Like performance collection, event collection. Yep. They of course do nothing for the health state. They are more for reporting and for showing things on a dashboard, which is nice. But there you can make obvious choices.
Yannick, just interested, how did you do that? Did you enable anything, or do you have a lot of disable overrides, or?
So for the APM part only?
No, just completely for your SCOM environment.
Completely, yeah. We disabled everything and just try to turn on what you're really interested in. Because again, we are using SCOM mainly 99% for just for the applications monitoring. Our infrastructure team, they are using a different monitoring tool.
Nagios?
Yeah, that's it, I think. But again, I mean, that's their choice, I think, and we really wanted to give the chance to SCOM because we think he deserved it, and that's why we on the application group are using SCOM to monitor our applications. Obviously, we also monitor the infrastructure behind of the applications, but not necessarily in the whole detail that our infrastructure does as well.
Yeah. Okay. Also interesting to hear, that you have the infrastructure team using their tools.
Yeah. I mean,
normally, so you at your company you don't have a central architect there.
No.
Okay.
No, we used to have, but I mean it's always the same thing, because there's always people that I don't want to work with that tool, I don't like that tool, and then tries to push for other tools, right? Yeah. Because they they are used to work with these tools in previous companies, so they say that's the best tool, so I want to, promote that tool within the company. Yeah. That's why, to avoid frustrations and, fights between the teams and say, okay, you want to use that tool for your monitoring part, okay, let's use it. We keep sticking on SCOM for the application part.
And how do you manage that helicopter overview then for completely everything?
I mean, that's where it's really a cross-team collaboration, right? A good example I can have is that so our networking team, they are using their monitoring tools to monitor their network, the components, routers, whatever, Cisco firewalls and everything they want to monitor. On the other side, we have the applications, which is all related to the network quality as well, right? You need a good network if you want to have stability in your applications.
Fundamental, yeah.
Yeah, and so at some point we had an issue in our application, in one of our applications, because from one data center, some users were not able to, well, they were able to use the application, but they had slowness. The networking team did not see anything on the monitoring
Not
part.
our side.
Yeah, exactly. And we were able to, after digging that, we were able to pinpoint that the fact there was an issue between that specific data center to that host for that application server in the other data center. And that's where they started again to look in their tools, which they still didn't find anything. They get back to the old school fashion of troubleshooting. They went to the different elements where, were between the applications, the servers and everything. And they were able to find out that there was just one specific firewall rule that had some packet loss from the application. So that's where they were able to adapt it. But again, it's just a good example of seeing why at some points we said, okay, let's maybe segregate the application monitoring from the rest of the infrastructure monitoring, because sometimes you have a different vision. You don't see necessarily the same thing, or you don't either want to see the same things,
But of course, it will be positive for the resolution time when you have one central view.
Centralized tool, yeah. That's why, that's right. And that's why we try also to introduce, Squared Up to use as a centralized tool, a centralized, overlayer of everything, to just have one, visualization tool.
Yeah, so you're having the PowerShell widget or the SQL widget reading out the Nagios data, for example. Yeah, really cool. And Bob, you see this a lot, I think, this different tower behavior.
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, to say a word of defense for the network team. According to the network team, it's never a network problem. So whenever they say we don't want to be included in SCOM or in the monitoring, then I will just let them, because, well, it's never their problem anyway. So according to them, obviously. So and I then tell that to the manager as well, that was a statement. So it's good luck with that. But you always see data coming in. It's almost never going to SCOM as a single pane of glass. So you can remove some old monitoring tools, go back from 20 to 7, for example. Those kind of things is what happens a lot. But a single tool for everything, for big organizations, I don't believe it. I've never seen that one come to reality. However, focusing on more is possible. And then you either are looking for connectors, so trying to connect data from another tool into SCOM, so you can display it using the display tools in there, whether it's SCOM itself or Squared Up, Live Maps, or whatever. Or you are using a manager of managers, something which is living outside of that, which can then merge data in and move up.
Yeah.
So like moving data back and forth. I saw one gateway have a nice product. There's the Martello IQ, which is also meant to gather data and then dashboard it out in a basic way. I would still say there's no performance dashboarding there. But that might be at some point the only way of doing it, bringing everything together in yet another tool, or trying to connect data somehow
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
a framework.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah, that's what we try to do with Squared Up on top of that, and ServiceNow as well, because we want to track the incidents, tickets based on the different monitoring tools that we might have in our company. So that's where we seeing the different alerts into ServiceNow, have a good view in by using Squared Up, for example, to get one centralized visualization of application monitoring, infrastructure monitoring, then the ticketing tools. And then that's where you can cross-reference, the open incidents, the work between the teams, so that they don't work in silos. And I'm talking about that because there was a actual question about Nolan in the chat on how we can do that to avoid that people are working in silos,
Yeah.
And that's why how we try to do that. It's really to use the different tools and correlate them to have, and with ServiceNow and Squared Up, just to have that one unique place to look for the information.
And I found it out, that you're telling everything comes together in ServiceNow. So that's a part that everybody accepts, Not going to one monitoring tool. No, that's too different. I want to use Nagios or SolarWinds or whatever, and the other one wants SCOM, and then ServiceNow. Everybody agrees. That's the top level ticketing system. So what I'm now seeing most of the times when I have customer talks to the customers, I'm almost talking now to an enterprise monitoring architect. So I see that the role of monitoring is a real important role of companies, and they are assigning an enterprise monitoring architect, and he's finding out, okay, we are going to use this tool, of course, SCOM, and then we are going to do the plugins, like Bob said, the connectors plugin, and we are going to make it, it is in SCOM or less. If it is not possible to do in SCOM, we use a connector of something else, and then but SCOM is our main tool. That's what I'm now seeing at the enterprise customers, and I think that's a really important step.
Yeah, I've actually also seen people, use all of their monitoring tools and dump everything into an email box, and then that's your centralized piece of information.
Okay, and then
I've never seen it work correctly, but like if you have more than 2 alerts per hour, then you have a problem already. But it works. Now, but
and then they monitor the mailbox, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Ali has a good point, I think. So you have in the chat. So you have a way of having a monitor or a manager of managers, let's say, to bring things together and display it. Whether it be alerts, health state would be even better to have that as well. Performance might or not be, but at least the state and the health and the alerts would be good. But I think he has a very good point that it would be a lot better if you can add the AI functionalities to it. Like having machine learning, artificial intelligence connected, and really try and push through all of that data, because it's becoming way too much, to be honest, right? So one monitoring tool already has too much data. You can imagine what happens if you add 6, 7 more to those.
But when you say you need, say, AI ML, what do you expect for this manager to perform using the artificial intelligence? I mean, do you want it to auto close alerts or auto set thresholds or something?
I think especially filtering out the noise.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Michel knows that, because at OpsLogix they have been working on some tooling there in the past. I know.
Yeah. So especially filtering out the noise, because what we noticed is that if you get too much false positives, they're just not going to take attention at it anymore. And then you have a real one, and then it's down, and then it's the blame to the tool. That's.
Yeah, and Ali, you're right. Finding root cause is something which is a wish for big companies for years, actually.
Yeah.
I've actually been at a company, at a customer who is going to create their own software in order to gather data from everywhere, even if they need to go get it from the machines themselves, but preferably from sources like SCOM or IBM or whatever they have in the backend, and then try and correlate, trying to find root cause, but also trying to guesstimate into the future when something is going to happen, based upon a initial event happening, which might lead to the next and to the next and to the next. Without those next steps happening, you can already try and guesstimate in front, but it's really, really difficult to do, and there's so much around that.
Yeah.
So
Also,
I fear for it.
Yeah, but again, if you are going to have a look at Power BI, that's features of AI. Yeah, it needs some more work there, but correlating to the future, and that kind of stuff is in there. You can detect something that is, different from the past, etc. So that's in Power BI. So
that'll be nice.
That will be cost you nothing, and that's the case, because I'm just wondering, Bob, that company that writes everything themselves, so their own correlation and collection software, that costs a lot of time, or not?
Oh yeah, it's huge, but I guess they have enough money.
Yeah. So
it needs to be in-house, right? So you cannot use a cloud service which is made for this. You need to do it in-house. So
so an on-premise Blue Stripe, for example, or
nope.
Nope.
Oh. So it's well, it's not always easy, right? And you also have to fill in the gaps at some point. I mean, if you look at Microsoft, they already are running some of these things in the cloud for years, like Graph, and which is now connected to the security center and Sentinel. They've been looking at statistics since forever in huge amount of data. A lot of it is also connected to the security postures, right, in attack vectors against websites and their own services, but also customer services. And yeah, it's the amounts of data there are huge, and there is a lot of AI and ML going through that data, because you can never find an answer there. It's just too much data. We cannot even think about the amounts there. with our limited SCOM data warehouses of 1 terabyte. I mean, that's nothing to them, right?
Yeah, or you can wait a long time.
Yeah, but like they are developing based upon that as well, but that stays within that sphere of the security sphere, and doesn't really get applied to all kinds of monitoring data and then gets ported back to on-prem.
Yeah, if you're talking about a huge amount of data indeed for SCOM, then I would think about putting it in Log Analytics, for example.
Yeah.
Beautiful platform to use as base, but of course it has a price tag, and that's the point. I think when Microsoft is going to drop, and they did it already a bit, but if they're going to drop the price there, then a lot of people will jump on.
I agree.
So that's okay. So it was a nice talk for me.
Yes,
of course. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, thanks, Bob. Thanks, Michelle, and everyone who's on the chat. Yes, thanks, Ali. If you have any questions, feel free to post them on Slack or even on the conference chat. We're always there to answer your questions.